Alright, so hello one and all, welcome back to another Mushoku Tensei skipped episode review thingy. We are here with episode 8 of season 2, part 1. So, yeah, this is where I go over the anime and talk about everything that it's skipped. That's what the title of the video suggests, so let's get into things. We start the episode off with adapting part of the Sylphie story that I covered back in episode 7, although it goes into more of Sylphie's thought process of everything, and I do recommend checking that out. And I know the episode just starts and I'm already plugging another one. I'm sorry. However, there's also Rudeus talking about summoning magic at the beginning of the episode, which is something I also covered in greater detail in the last episode. Again, I'm sorry. Now, there's actually, despite the episode length compared to last week's, because last week's was long, this one isn't, there's actually a lot of differences between this episode and the light novel. And it's all taken from, like, different parts, like, even from different books. This episode kind of goes all over the place, for whatever reason. And so I'm just going to go, like, with the chronology of the books, even if I cover a scene that the anime may adapt in the future. It doesn't matter, we're getting into things. So Rudeus realizes, because beating Fitz, dominating the Beast Folk princesses, Linnea and Persenna, and defeating a Demon King, that everyone in the academy is now absolutely terrified of him. Goldiade, the gorilla woman, had walked past him as he tried to say hello, and she became terrified. Everyone had circled around and thought that Rudeus was bullying her, and that's when Linnea and Persenna came to, like, fix the situation and got Goldiade to scram. Rudeus explains the situation and his history with Goldiade, and the two were surprised that Rudeus was the Phantom Panty thief that they've heard so much about. But with Rudeus' power, they also suggest becoming rulers of the school. Rudeus is certainly strong enough, and in no time, they'll be kings and queens. And Rudeus compares them to Transformers and calls them a couple fuzzy Decepticons. And earlier, back with, like, the mating season debacle in the last episode, he had referred to all of, like, the Doldia tribe to being a whole tribe of Star Screams. So there was a huge Transformers theme going on with this book. But anyway, Rudeus shuts them down as they say that instead they gather up panties from every student here and give them to him. He worships a pair of panties after all, but Rudeus obviously doesn't care about the panties specifically. Although if it was a pair from Linnea and Persenna, the two did have a slightly musky smell, but at the end of the day, they were still attractive women. And the scent of their fur wasn't all half bad at close range either. However, Fitz would definitely hate it, so he's simply forced to turn this idea down too, unfortunately. This is one of the bigger disappointments in the series. It's a shame. Regardless of all this, it has made Rudeus realize his true strength. According to Batagati, it takes king-level spells in order to break through his Toki or battle aura. And so this means that you would have to be on the level of Ruijerd or Ghislaine to even hurt Batagati. However, what separates Rudeus from those two is his lack of Toki. Toki allows you to have great defense, speed, and strength, and since Rudeus for the life of him can't use it, he's basically just a glass cannon. He's got the mana capabilities of a demon god with his demon eye to help him go toe-to-toe with slightly stronger opponents, but if he wants to defeat even stronger opponents, he'd have to work on those defenses. He'd need to get some kind of armor or something maybe. So back in the conversation, Linnea tells Rudeus that he needs to have more confidence in himself. It might help with his condition too, and Rudeus thinks about it for a sec. He has had a lack of confidence over the past few years. First was the defeat of Orsted, being dumped by Eris, then screwing things up with Sarah. Perhaps it really is confidence that can make things better, and so he tries it. He walks into a crowd of people as they all make way for him instantly. He loves this feeling just for a second before realizing, is this what the people who bullied Rudeus felt like? That realization took the fun out of everything instantly. And I'm just going to read from the book for a second. Whatever I had accomplished so far in this life, the fact that I had spent my entire last one at the very bottom of the totem pole, that was never going to change, even if my condition did cure itself. And if I forgot about it, I'd probably end up repeating the exact same mistakes I'd made before. I had a more positive outlook on life now for sure, but I was still the same person deep down. I couldn't let myself forget that. This time around, I wasn't going to end up a shut-in. I don't know. I just like that. Again, I like reading from the book every now and then. It's got some good quotes. I like it. Rudeus then, like in the anime, goes to Fitz and discusses the possibilities of a professor at the academy knowing something about summoning magic. Although strangely enough, in the previous volume, we had already come to the conclusion that there wasn't a professor at the school that could do anything about this, but let's have the conversation again. Apparently, though, there were a few members of the Magician's Guild that could cast summoning spells, but they were beginner or intermediate tier at best. He wanted an expert, and an expert he was given. Fitz said that he found out from the principal and the vice principal that Silent 7-Star had expert skills of knowledge on how summoning works. In fact, Seven was an A-rank member of the Magician's Guild. We do learn a little bit more about the hierarchy. Before, back in episode 4 skip content, we found out about the lower half of the Magician's Guild's rankings and what they mean, but now we find out about the upper half. If you were rank B, you were able to open up your own magician school, and the guild would offer logistical and financial support. The vice principal genius was a B rank member. An A rank member were basically the equivalent of a branch manager. S rank members meant that you were a core member of the leadership group, and the principal, George, was an S rank member. So this meant that Seven had more power than the vice principal of the best magic school in the world. It's kind of crazy, but it's not too surprising considering all that they've introduced. They've allowed for better transport of food from Asura to Renoa, introduced new food menu items, including a few Japanese-style meals. They created a concept of uniforms. They coined the invention of blackboards, which was basically just like writing on pure black surface with a stick of limestone. And it's implied that she was the founder of Remate, which it's kind of like the Amazon of this world, and it really changed it entirely. Rudeus may not have been the sharpest tool in the shed, but even he knew what all this meant, and he was afraid. For a few reasons, he wanted to be special, to be the only one here with knowledge from another world, and he was afraid of what this person might think of him. They're going around here changing the fundamentals of the school system, and what? Like, he's done what in comparison? The answer to that is a lot more than Rudeus had initially thought, though. He had won over the loyalty of a blush child, beaten the 2 top delinquents at the school, earned the sympathy of its foremost genius, and even made friends with a demon king from the demon continent. Half of the student body looked at him in awe, and he's not trying to let it all go to his head, but it kinda did. Rudeus found out about the whereabouts of Seven from Genius without any fuss. The school had given her a laboratory that consisted of 3 large rooms at the very back of the 3rd floor in the main research building. She had spent almost all of her time there, only ever coming out on rare occasions. When Rudeus met Seven, which I'm just going to call Nanahoshi from now on, the encounter went about the same. Only Fitz was at the bottom of the stairs, and the reason why he passed out was because he literally slipped and fell down the stairs. He didn't just white eye pass out. He fell down the stairs. And so the next scene, it doesn't take place in Nanahoshi's lab like in the anime. Rather, it takes place in the infirmary. Again, because my boy slipped down the stairs. And so their conversation, meanwhile, does go pretty one-to-one, which on one hand is surprising, but at the same time, for something as important as this, it makes sense for the accuracy. And so a quick TLDR, the first part of the situation is that Nanahoshi was not reincarnated, but rather was summoned here and wants to go home. It did feel like she was hiding something from Rudeus, but it made sense given his initial reaction of her and the fact that he said that he didn't want to go back. Nanahoshi does say that she appeared in some open field in the Asura Kingdom, and Orson happened to find her and let her tag along. Over the next 2 years, she learned about the basics of the world and only took her a year to master the human tongue. She had earned money with our world's knowledge of cuisine and clothing, spent that money to obtain power, and then used that power to secure reliable streams of passive income. She also used the fact that she knew Orsted, the dragon god, to her advantage. One signature from him can get her a meeting with anyone, anywhere. With some skillful negotiation on her part, it was enough to convince some of the powerful CERN merchants to arrange stable distribution routes for her products. By this point, she had enough money to live out the rest of her life in luxury. But, of course, that wasn't her goal. Her goal was to get back to Earth. However, after that, she traveled with Orsted for a year, trying to find information on her friends on how to return. She had traveled the world in a year thanks to teleportation circles. Only remnants remain thanks to most of them being destroyed centuries ago. Nanahoshi had also made a certain acquaintance, who posited the idea that someone could have been responsible for the summoning her to this world on purpose. The one she spoke to, however, is advised to keep it a secret. They were a world-class authority on summoning magic, but even they had no idea how Nanahoshi could have been summoned from another world. So when she arrived on campus, she made many changes, those of which I had already listed, and the Magician's Guild had given her A rank and even offered her S rank if she gave them all of her knowledge, but she obviously declined. One interesting difference is when she mentions the fact that they could be erased if they changed too much, but to quote her reasoning, she goes haven't you read any science fiction? What if there's some kind of cosmic force that tries to keep events moving down their proper path? I just wanted to point out her reasoning because it's very interesting compared to the animes. But after a bit more of a back and forth, again, the anime covers a lot of this. She talks about how everything in this world, even corpses, have mana. but she doesn't. And Rudeus wonders, since magic was such a fundamental part of this world, the lack of mana should cause some sort of problem. But in regards to Nanahoshi's lack of aging, she does write down that she's interested in trying to fix that. So I wonder if it's possible for there to be some kind of spell to manipulate one's age. Anyway, we get a detailed explanation on how magic circles work. You can't make them with any regular paint. What you need to do is pulverize magic crystals and mix the powder in with some specific ingredients to make a magic paint of sorts. From there, you draw very specific patterns, let it settle on the surface so it can be absorbed. From there, it'll be very difficult to erase. Pouring mana into the paint would magnify the power of your magic and produce a specific effect based on the structure of the circle. The paint would then evaporate once it was completed. You need some very specific things to make it, and the list of ingredients needed would vary by spell. Most king tier spells required some very unusual catalysts. You need the financial backing of an entire country to get your hands on everything you needed for a single king tier summoning spell. That was the modern version of how magic circles worked. Back in the day, there had been many more methods of how to do it that have been lost mostly to time. You could carve a magic circle into stone and lump it full of magic directly, for example, and that's what I think what Rosenberg did with its snow, where you piled it up in the center of town and then you were able to melt it. I believe it was etched into the bricks. But Nanahoshi couldn't do this method and thus couldn't research on it much. Magic circles could be used for almost any sort of spell if you had a good pattern, the right paint, and sufficient mana. But there was one major problem. The patterns had been handed down orally through generations, and most of them were lost over the centuries. There was no one out there capable of devising new ones anymore either. If you wanted to discover a new magic circle, your only option was to find some old scroll left forgotten in the back of a royal, treasure chest or something, or stumble upon the engraving in the depths of an ancient ruin. This had been how things were until Nanahoshi arrived. She had analyzed the patterns of the known magic circles, drawn up her own attempts, and carried out countless experiments. Eventually, she'd succeeded in creating her own brand new patterns. And they then start talking about their past lives like they do in the anime, and they come up with a deal. He gives her mana while she gives him knowledge. Again, from here, things go very similar to the anime. However, one thing that threw me off was when Fitz yelled and that said, he was going to kill Nanahoshi, the word kill was bolded and italicized, which was pretty cool. Talk about action in a book, right? So cool. Anyway, this was a bit of a shorter skip content video. The first half had a bit of new stuff that the anime does kind of adapt in the next episode, but obviously not in as much detail. And when it came to most Nanahoshi stuff, it was, for the most part, there. I mean, considering this episode only adapted 50 pages, I would hope that it actually adapts the majority of it, because there are some other episodes out there that adapt 150. For example, the last episode was about 120 pages. So, yeah. I hope it doesn't have too much skip content, which is very nice. And of course, the anime, the only things that are really skipped this episode were, lore and mechanics, which is, I guess, understandable. I don't like it, but, for the most part, good job, anime. You did it. You adapted a good episode. Pretty one-to-one. The animation was pretty solid when he met Nanahoshi, too. And the music in her lab when, she was explaining everything, it gave me actual chills, goosebumps, so good job. I complain about the anime a lot, but today I wanted to say, good job. I'm proud of you, sport. Now, get out there. Get out there and do a good job in the next part. Please, do a better job. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, give it a like and subscribe for more Mushoku Tensei content, and I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.